Okay.
Namaste, Namaskar, everybody. Welcome once again. We are back with Achala ji. Welcome, Achala ji. So,
Namaste, Dr. Paiji.
Namaste. And our series that we started on healing with the grahas has been accepted very well by all my viewers, and they wanted you back. So we are back here now, and today we are going to discuss about healing with Mars, in your natal chart. So, Achalaji, over to you, and I'm all ears to listen to what you have to share about Mars.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paiji. Yeah, Mars is a very, very fascinating planet for me, so I'm very happy to discuss about him today. Now, in my experience, Mars is really quite an exceptional planet because I have seen something quite fascinating and really amazing when it comes to Mars placements in people's birth charts. Sometimes when people come for a reading and they have real, let's say, issues in charts, like really damaged planets and lots of struggles and challenges. But then I observed that if just this Mars himself is strongly placed, he somehow manages to compensate for all of that. And this is why Mars feels to me to be such a fascinating planet, really, because it is a planet of our willpower. And actually, he was also deemed to be this main karaka or main significator of change and transformation. That means that without Mars, the change or transformation can't happen. And on the other hand, change and transformation can be possible when Mars is strong, when Mars's blessing is present. We usually look at change and transformation a little bit with fear. We prefer not to experience that. But if we look more from positive perspective at change and transformation, it is very often Mars as a planet that actually allows us also to transform something that maybe we don't like in our life or within ourselves, something that we consider to be negative. And Mars truly is this fire of transformation, you could say, because it is a planet that is fiery in nature, but it is also a planet that is tamasic in nature, which means there is a little bit of this energy of Shiva present. Even according to the myth, Mars was born in quite exceptional circumstances because he actually came into being just because of drop of sweat that fallen from Shiva's third eye, actually on the ground, and was received by Mother Earth. So definitely there is this very powerful energy of transformation present here, which is why I personally like to call Mars this inner warrior within us. Whenever we feel that we want to change something, this determination, this courage arises to do something differently. And we truly have this willpower. That is really the energy of Mars that enables that. So Mars is, of course, this inner warrior within us, the main planet that gives us this courage to change something, the willpower to move ahead, even against the odds, even if all the other grahas maybe don't support our progress in some way or evolution. Mars is this planet that truly always wants to remind us that with our willpower and determination, we can change things still. And that is quite beautiful about him. Of course, Mars is also this giver of passion within us. Whenever we have this fire of being very passionate about something, when we do our work or our duty truly with this energy, and this dynamism. And that's a really amazing thing about him as well. So once again, I wanted to just quickly look at Mars also from perspective of how differently he might behave when he's a little bit more, you could say, lingering towards one of the three gunas, tamas, rajas, or sattva. And for Mars, it's kind of natural to be in this mode of tamas, you could say, because Mars is a tamasic planet in a way. And people sometimes feel really confused about it because normally when we think about Mars, fiery planet that gives us this dynamic energy and passion, that quite certainly feels a bit more Rajasic in nature. But one thing that is that we sometimes tend to forget about Mars is that he's often called this warrior or a soldier. And soldier is not the one who is giving orders or particularly using, let's say, his intelligence in order to make some important decisions. Soldier is the one who fulfills the duty that has been given to him, that is just doing his duty that is there. And whenever, these planets are like Mars and Saturn, because they're both tamasic. So in their case, we are saying that they're tamasic because these planets, they are more listening to orders rather than being in charge. That's more in their nature when they are in the guna of tamas. They also support us in some of very, you could say, automatic actions, like habits, for example. Once we form a habit, we just keep going with that, which is why Mars is incredibly powerful planet when it comes to actually establishing new habits and really making them. Because these habits, when they are very positive, they also can become the source of our strength. And the strength and power is a very big thing with Mars as well. Now, when Mars is a little bit more Rajasic in nature, which is what we usually associate Mars with, then of course he becomes more tinted by this color of passion. He's more passionate, he wants to move forward, and he's more innovative in nature as well. So he behaves quite differently. While when he evolves into Sattvic mode, because these two modes, Tamas and Rajas, you could say they are kind of opposites of one another. Like if we truly look at that, like normally Mars that is a little more tamasic, he will use minimum effort in order to achieve something. He will just stick to his duty, but will not necessarily take any initiative. While Mars, which is more Rajasic in nature, he will definitely have a little bit of ambition, a little bit of passion, a little extra stress as well, of course, but also more of taking initiative. So they are like two opposite modes. But Sattvic Mars is quite different of both of them. Because when Mars becomes more, moving towards the guna of Sattva, when this fire or this inner warrior within us evolves, then he starts seeking higher purpose. He starts seeking some form of, you could say, balance between those two qualities. Because it's very natural for us that in our daily lives, we mainly have this tamasic or rajasic mode. Tamasic when we are just lazy, we don't want to do anything, we just want to rest. And rajasic when we are very passionate and active, but it also comes with struggle and stress. But guna of sattva kind of combines both of them, brings them into balance, producing a calm focus, being proactive, but without stress associated with that. And this I find quite fascinating because Mars as a planet is also naturally exalted in the sign of Capricorn, which belongs to this sattvic group of rashis, starting from Sagittarius, ending with Pisces. And he's exalted in original 10th house, also of higher purpose, of higher goal, searching actually something that he can serve, something that is higher than just satisfying our passions or just doing action for the sake of doing action, you could say. Because Mars definitely sometimes, when he's overly rajasic, he can go into that mode, working for the sake of working, just in order to keep being active all the time. Mars that is overly rajasic may even have trouble resting, in fact. It might be very difficult for him to just sit and do nothing. While Mars that is sattvic is calm, but is focused. It's positively motivated. It's not drained of its energy. It doesn't have an excess of energy. It doesn't spend it on things that are not supportive to it in a way. Because I personally believe that Mars as a planet, since he represents our strength, our willpower, our energy itself, is truly the planet that is in many ways actually showing us, like, how do we deal with our energy? Do we spend too much of it or too little of it? Like, how do we actually deal with our energy? Where do we spend our energy? Even just by seeing in which house Mars is being placed, in our chart, we can clearly see that in this particular area of our life, we tend to spend a lot of our energy as well. And he always is trying to inspire us to seek balance between those two opposite modes, of tamas and rajas, which also makes perfect sense when it comes to Mars, because Mars is also the original ruler of the third house, the karaka of the third house itself, which is the house of how we perceive the sense of time as well. The house of, are we stressed about deadlines and flow of time and things like that, or do we just embrace it as it comes? And it's quite interesting because actually the tissue in our body that has been assigned to Mars is our nervous system itself. And it makes perfect sense, because if we look at our nervous system, it's really like that, it has these two main modes, the sympathetic mode and the parasympathetic mode of safety and resting, which would be more Scorpio side of Mars, definitely. And then there is another mode of being very, very active and passionate, which is a little bit more towards Aries side of Mars. And we, of course, keep kind of trying to find balance, running from one to another. But there is also something more that Mars can experience, being very present in the moment, active with calmness. This is something that Krishna kind of described really beautifully in chapter 3rd and 4th of Bhagavad Gita, acting without truly acting, doing our duty, whatever we have to do, but at the same time, not being stressed about it, not being stressed about the outcome, because this is when our personal energy and the energy of our Mars actually becomes much more efficient, and we can also achieve much more. So Mars is, from that perspective, a truly fascinating planet. And in our energy body, Mars also represents the solar plexus chakra, because that's the seat of fire within us, and Mars is also a fiery graha. That's also an incredibly important energy center, which is also very important for our willpower, our courage, right, to meet all those obstacles or changes that life is throwing at us. But it is also the place of digestion as well in our physical body. And Mars has been quite strongly associated also with digestive system and how we digest all those things, like literally and metaphorically, because digestion itself is somehow a metaphor also of all this transformation that we undergo. Digestive system as a whole is kind of like a one big bodily metaphor of how we actually assimilate and digest all the life experiences. Do we learn something from them? Do we stress about them? That's more like Rajasic thing. Or do we somehow resist them? That would be a little bit more of Tamasic thing as well. So there are like these three ways, basically, how we can approach digesting different life experiences. We either learn from them, guna or sattva. We actually stress about them and get very emotional and personal about them. That's the Rajasic mode. Or we plainly resist them, deny them. That's the actual guna of tamas. And of course, healthy fire is the fire that not just burns, but also gives light and warmth. And this is also a really beautiful thing, because when we think about fire itself, it's a very beautiful element. First of all, it's a very dominant element. This is something that my Gurudev said on quite a few occasions, that among all of the elements, fire is the most dominant. It's the most powerful, actually. We can truly feel the power when we look at this fire. It's also the only element that rises up, right? So there is some form of energy of ambition also present inside. It's also the element that gives light, that actually emits both light and warmth. So if we think about all those qualities, it's not strange that also fire personified as Agni is the very first deity mentioned in the Vedas, in the very, very first sukta, the first deity invoked, because we always firstly invoke this fire. And if we even just think about it, how much importance Vedic culture gives to fire itself, it makes also a lot of sense to give a lot of importance as well to Mars in our chart. Because Mars presiding over such a dominant element is also reminding us that the life circumstances are not always easy, what we are experiencing. And also our planetary placements may also not always be easy. But if our Mars is strong and gives us a strong willpower as well, we actually can change that. We can transform some things. And this I find so beautiful about Mars, because being Karaka, also the third house, which represents the hands, right? He kind of reminds us that our destiny is also partially in our hands, because perhaps we don't have any influence on the karma we were born with, on the chart we were born with, but we are quite certainly having influence on how we are creating our future, because with every breath, with every action, again, Mars is a Karaka of action, right? With every action we take, we actually do create a new future as well, of some sort. And we have certain influence on that. So Mars is this really fascinating planet who reminds us to be very mindful about it and to remember as well that willpower is truly powerful. And this is something that even Paramahansa Yogananda said, that it's true, sometimes our planetary influences can be very, very difficult, but where there is this willpower and this energy that I want to change, I want to be different, I do not want to be slave of my past, but I actually want to evolve, then for sure the universe will support us, and Mars will for sure support us as well. Which is why it's quite fascinating and amazing. Like, even if we go to Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, which is like a Bible of Vedic astrology, one of the most commonly mentioned remedies there is actually either chanting Mahamrityunjaya mantra to Lord Shiva, or reading Devi Mahatmya of Goddess Durga, Durga Saptasati. And it makes really a lot of sense, because both Goddess Durga and Lord Shiva, they are these transformative energies. They remind us that we can transform ourselves. Fire literally represents burning, and Mars also represents this willpower within us that, even used in a very positive way, can burn some of our karma also, can help us to advance further in the same way how fire is rising up. And for me personally, I always associated especially this particular aspect of Divine Mother, Goddess Durga, with Mars himself as well. Even I believe Prashnamarga is saying that whenever Moon is in association with Mars or dwelling in a sign of Mars, then it becomes Durga, because she's like a warrior goddess. She's the one who truly helps us to transform and embodies those qualities. And it also makes quite some sense if we think about it, that even according to Sage Parashara, we have actually two planets in our birth chart which can potentially represent our mother and our relationship with our mother. And that's Moon and Mars. And he even says that actually you need to, which one of them is stronger. And only based on that, you will know that this is your relationship with mother. And Moon and Mars, they have this energy because they are both protective in nature. Just Moon is a little bit more nourishing. Mars definitely a little bit more strict in a way. But it makes also a lot of sense, because even in the story, Mars is born actually in a way without a father, because just his Mother Earth herself, is raising him up. So the goddess, especially in her very protective aspects, in her fierce aspects, Ugra form, because Mars is also Ugra or fierce in nature, she also embodies the qualities of Mars. She's also called Chandi or Chandika, very fierce one. She's even called in Devi Bhagavata Purana Mangala, which is the name of Mars as well, the ever auspicious one, the reddish goddess. And she's truly a fascinating example of how this power of Mars can be used within us for the highest purpose possible. Because if we read, for example, Devi Mahatmya, this great story of the goddess, where she's being praised in her three forms as Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati, and then she's killing all those different demons. Of course, it's a beautiful metaphor of actually killing the demons also inside of our mind, in our own psychology as well. But it's a really fascinating thing to even see how she is born. For example, in the second chapter of Devi Mahatmya, there's this beautiful description how goddess is being born out of anger of all the gods, out of their frustration. So what they are doing, they are angry. Why they are angry? Because there is a demon, Mahishasura, the demon representing the unhealthy Rajaguna, you could say, who is actually harassing everyone, who is overthrowing even heavens and taking all their power away. And it's a little bit like that with us as well. When Rajaguna dominates us with the energy of passion, desire, anger is completely taking over, we become powerless in front of it. We lose actually our power and determination. So these gods, of course, they represent our different senses, our different energies and shaktis within us. And what they do, they all get very angry and frustrated, and they start to emanate this tejas, divine light, which combines into one. And out of this light, out of this great fire, the great goddess is born. She is actually taking a form. And I find this story incredibly powerful because it is in a way how it works with the energy with Mars within us as well. When this guna of rajas, passions, desires kind of renders us very, very weak sometimes as the gods, then we sometimes truly become very like angry and frustrated with ourselves, right? Like Mars is also karaka of anger, actually. And anger can be destructive, but sometimes anger can be also like this fascinating catalyst towards change. When we are especially like angry and frustrated with ourselves because again, we succumbed to some of our desires or we didn't manage to establish a healthy habit. And then when we actually get frustrated enough sometimes, then all these inner powers and energies within us, they finally get mobilized. Their light is combining into one, into some form of higher. And they said, okay, we want to bring this change to actually make it happen. And that is a really fascinating thing. And of course, out of this anger of gods, Devi, or the goddess, is born, and then she finally slays the demon Mahishasura. And why I find this story quite fascinating, really, about this goddess who helps us to regain our power in some way. Because if we look at it even from perspective of the zodiac, so the goddess, divine mother, she's seated on a lion, and she's killing a demon, Mahishasura, who is in the form of buffalo, which is not so different animal from a bull, actually, if we think about it. In fact, sometimes in the past, the sign of Taurus was also associated with Mahishasura because it's a Rajasic sign ruled by a Rajasic planet, Venus. While opposite to it is Scorpio, which is very often associated with these fierce forms of the goddess, who is about to bring a change and almost like forcibly out of our comfort zone sometimes. And if we think about it, it's truly fascinating because like one of the main planets responsible for the guna of rajas is Venus. We have two planets that are rajasic, Venus and Mercury. But for Venus, it's very interesting because Venus is also ruling Taurus and Libra, the original second and original seventh house, which are the Marakastanas, actually, the places of loss of energy. Because truly Venus can sometimes be so passionate in her desires and passions that she can make us spend too much of our energy on those as well. And then opposite to each house of Venus, we have Mars, a planet that is quite commonly associated with quite opposite opposite idea of restraint, idea even of celibacy sometimes in some scriptures. So it's a really interesting thing over here, because Mars in this sense becomes truly like this force of transformation who can help us to, in a way, rise above these guna of rajas, rise above these inner demons that are draining so much of our own energy. And so we can find more energy to make change happen in a way. There's this saying, that the change cannot happen until we are still comfortable. As long as we are comfortable as it is, and the frustration even of being in that situation is not bigger than frustration of actually evolving, then of course we will not change. But Mars, through his very fiery and intense energy, he awakens that within us. And this is really, really interesting, actually, if we look at this slide over here, because even Devi Mahatmya or Durga Saptasati in Brihat Parashara Shastra is particularly recommended whenever we undergo through the Mahadasha or Antardasha of planets that are rulers of Maraka sthanas as well. So it makes also a lot of sense that in these dashas, we probably tend to be a little bit too passive, a little bit overly compromising, and therefore we are actually encouraged to meditate of Goddess Durga, the one who is giver of this willpower and courage within us. So this is one of the reasons why I'm very happy to talk about Mars right now, before the period of Navaratri, especially, during which we traditionally also chant and meditate on Goddess Durga and read also Devi Mahatmya. So I just wanted to really quickly go through these different type of moods, I would say, that Mars can go through. Mars, of course, can also become retrograde, and he will become retrograde quite soon. He's already in the shadow of being retrograde, actually. I like to call him Introverted Mars, because when Mars becomes retrograde, like any other retrograde graha, he becomes very close to Earth, but at the same time, his energy is more turned inwards rather than externally. Which is why sometimes making the action in the outside might be not as easy with Mars placed like that. But on the other hand, to initiate the inner transformation, it might be much easier. So of course, the placement of retrograde Mars himself has its shadow and bright sides. Definitely taking action is not always as easy in that period. But on the other hand, this personal transformation might be much easier. Mars also can be like any other graha in the state of shame when conjunct with Rahu or Ketu. And very often when Mars is in a state like that, then sometimes like exhibiting our willpower or even strength can be something that is somehow a source of taboo for us, which is also not a very strange thing in our society, because we don't have many great, I would say, role models when it comes to power and strength. Therefore, we tend to vilify this energy quite a lot sometimes. And especially when Mars is conjunct with Rahu and Ketu, there might be some beliefs of that sort in our minds, that it's better not to be too ambitious, it's better not to be, how to say, too passionate, it's better to just do our duty. The opposite, of course, would be a proud Mars when he's in Capricorn, exalted, or he's in his Mula Trikona in Aries. That's usually a very energetic Mars, very powerful Mars. But this is also the Mars for whom it might be hard to stop sometimes. He might work too much. He might be sometimes overly into just being active. And in fact, Mars, who is in this state of pride, might even have sense of guilt when he's not doing anything or just resting or just going to sleep, because there is too much of this identification and too much of, you could say, pride associated with the idea of being active and dynamic. Mars can also be agitated or frustrated when he's combusted by the sun. And I would say in case of Mars, it's a very interesting situation because when Mars is combust, we are having two really strong, very fiery grahas, Sun and Mars, very close to one another. And Mars in such a placement, when he's in this state of combustion, he can truly disturb the house he's sitting in sometimes. This house can sometimes become like a source of our frustration. We can be very touchy about the topics related with that house. And we can even be not just irritated, we can even become very easily angry about those topics as well. Because, of course, we can't forget that Mars is also a karaka of anger. And when he's very, very strong or really close to the sun, then this more fiery, passionate side of Mars kind of goes more, expresses itself a little more. Mars can be also in a sense of starving when he is conjunct with Saturn. And that's also a unique situation for Mars because every graha which is conjunct with Saturn, regardless whether friend or not friend, is always in this state called Kshudita Avastha, a state of starvation or not having enough energy. But because also Saturn considers Mars to be an enemy, Saturn also becomes starved by Mars. So actually neither of them is really happy about this association. And even though they are both tamasic planets, and we could almost say that they have some similar agendas in some way, but they are very different in executing them. Mars is very independent naturally, Saturn not that much. Saturn is very patient and takes his time. Mars is impatient and wants everything right here, right now. So when we have this conjunction of Saturn and Mars together, once again, it is very possible that that house will also be some form of source of frustration. Again, it depends like how close they are to each other, but it's usually somehow frustrating combination. It's normally not easy for natives to experience. At least that's what I have seen so far. Mars, of course, can be dormant also when he's in the Rashi of his enemy or when he is in debilitation, like in the sign of Cancer. We are saying that Mars in this state is like in Sushupti Avastha, in a very deep sleep. And normally we would say that we would imagine probably that Mars in this state will be probably very sleepy, lazy, in his comfort zone. And this is how I believe many people imagine Mars in Cancer to be. But to be honest, you can see that Mars is not necessarily just like that when he is in Cancer. Because whenever Mars, the planet that is representing how we are managing our energy, you could say, this energy of inner fire, inner warrior within us, when he's asleep, it means we do not know yet how to use this energy effectively. So we can either resort to being just in our comfort zone, or we can resort to actual opposite, which is aggression. And that's also quite common with Mars debilitated, that Mars is exhibiting too much of this aggressive side of himself sometimes. And of course, Mars, when he's towards the very end of a masculine Rashi or right in the beginning of feminine Rashi, can be in this state of dying also, when he doesn't have enough energy. And this is usually a more calm Mars, Mars that can be a little bit more in his comfort zone and will not have very high level of energy. I would say that this is not such an easy place for Mars to be in when Mars is experiencing that, because Mars is one of the planets that is almost like a main significator of our energy level, like how energetic, how strong we are. So when he's in this state of dying, he won't be giving us that much of energy, especially on physical level, which sometimes can be not so easy on our health as well, or like overall sense of energy. So that definitely is somehow problematic placement when that happens. But of course, these are just a few, I would say, potential things that could happen to Mars. And as always, I can never stress it enough. It's not like everything that can happen to Mars. There are a lot of in Vedic astrology out there and a lot of things that the planet can go through. Definitely one thing that I like to suggest to people when Mars is somehow suffering in a chart is actually meditating on Goddess Durga. Either contemplating on Devi Mahatmya, this great story of the goddess, which comes from Markandeya Purana, or even chant her simple mantra, Om Dum Durgaye Namaha. Because whenever something is happening to Mars, and whenever he's causing us some trouble, then most likely we have problem with digesting some things, some experiences, some emotions in life. And Durga, her very name means a difficult one. She helps us to digest and overcome even the most difficult things, transform anything that is there, and to do it with courage, with power, but without pride. This is actually something that always, whenever I hear Devi Mahatmya during Navaratri time, it really like strikes me that when Devi, goddess, is described, how she's killing all these demons and there's blood all over the place. It's like a really graphic description, but she is not described as having fierce expression. She's actually gently smiling. She's described as being incredibly elegant and gracious with meeting those difficulties in life, those demons. She's not too ferocious. She's not angry or frustrated. She's actually very elegant and always like equipoised. Which is why also when we kind of read that sort of description of goddess in her various forms, defeating and killing those demons, and these very detail-oriented descriptions, we really kind of get to relive that in our own minds. And it also impacts us in a way, because as we imagine this goddess within us, who is smiling gently and being so elegant and somehow effortless in how she's overcoming those difficulties, we also awaken that quality within ourselves, which is why it really makes so much sense to me why Sage Parashara so frequently said, meditate on Devi Mahatmya, read the Devi Mahatmya if you want to overcome almost any difficulty. And there's almost no better time to actually meditate on Devi Mahatmya and meditate on Goddess Durga than specifically this autumn Navaratri that is coming soon. Which is why even during this time, for the first time this year, I decided, okay, for the 9 days of Navaratri, we will actually do this process. We'll read Devi Mahatmya, the right chapter, the right day, contemplate about it, because I kept recommending it to people throughout years, but the thing is that many people do not know how to do it, especially like if we don't have it like in habit to really contemplate on those spiritual stories, sometimes we don't know how to approach it. And especially Sage Parashara, one other thing that he also recommended is, of course, doing fire ritual, a yagna, a homa. Especially for Mars, it can be greatly uplifting. Even it's quite a traditional remedy, in fact, coming also from Parashara Hora Shastra, where these 700 verses of Devi Mahatmya are recited, and there is offering to the fire done with them as well, with each of those verses. But any form of fire ritual, even if really, really simple, is always also very, very helpful for Mars and for uplifting him. And of course, lastly, Mars, among all the different forms of Lord Vishnu, he is connected to Lord Narasimha. It's interesting, though, again, the connection that a lion is somehow an animal very strongly associated with Mars, because both Devi Durga, she sits on a lion, then Lord Narasimha, he's half lion, half man. And of course, he also represents this ugra, ferocious form, and especially especially if I believe we have some really stubborn habits, stubborn tendencies that it's so hard to overcome, it's actually easiest to pray to the fierce forms of the divine, either Goddess Durga or even Lord Narasimha is even more, you could say, powerful in this sense. And both of them, of course, also help us to protect us as well. They are not just helping us to overcome those inner demons, but generally to protect us in life and to make us feel protected as well. And that's a truly beautiful thing also that Mars is doing, and Mars is awakening in us. He's not just the inner warrior, he is the protector as well. So I would say that these are like the easiest things that we can do. I always try to focus mainly on those things that are very, very easy to do, because when something is very, very difficult, then of course we find plenty of excuses why not to do that. But these things are very, very simple and very effective as well. So over to you, Dr. Paiji.
Achala, whenever I come to these lessons, I become a student and I get so engrossed with so many, in such a short, succinct manner. You articulate it so very well and you encapsulate the energy of the planet. So, I'm very, very grateful that you're doing this. And I'm sure that everybody is loving this series. Now, when you're talking about Durga, before we started, I was asking you about, what is the connection that you see with Durga? And here is some of my things that I wanted to share for this Navaratri as well. Now, I was reading Agni Puran, and in the chapter on, Jyotisha, there is a small chapter on Jyotisha with some slokas.
Yes.
In that shloka in Agni Puran talks about when is Durga Devi, awakened, which means when she's woken up. So it says in Agni Puran, Durga is made to wake up when sun enters Virgo sign. So Virgo is Kanya, which means
yes,
Durga is also, even though people think she is an avatar or incarnation of Parvati with the concept, but she is said to be a Kanya. So not many people know in certain traditions, they take Kanya is also ruled by Durga Devi. So whenever sun enters Virgo is when we do the Sharad Navaratra, which means what is the Navaratra that is coming up? That is what we celebrate. Now, Agni Puran also says you have to wake up Durga when sun is in Virgo and it is Bhadra Tithi. Bhadra means 2nd, 7th, and the 12th lunar day. And this happens in Shukla Paksha. You will never get the 12th Tithi during the Navratra because you have, the 9 nights, and then the 10th night is Vijayadashami. Now, it is also said that she's awakened when it is Tuesday, Saturday, or Sunday. And to add to that, they say she's also awakened when it is 3 Pushkar Nakshatras, which means those nakshatras where one pada is falling in one Rashi and 3 padas are falling in another Rashi, which are only in Vimshotri Dasha system. Suns and Jupiter's nakshatra are called as 3 Pushkara nakshatras or 3 pada nakshatras. So very interesting that you see that she's awakened in Bhadra Tithi, which is connected to, in the Tithi system, it's connected to the earth element. And
yes,
Mangal, or what we call as Kuja. Kuja means born from the earth. Ja means born from. So he is also called as Mahija. Mahija means earth. So that is one very important observation that I saw that you're trying to bring here with Durga. Now, in the southern tradition, especially from Kerala, there is a slight variation of how they worship Durga. If it is Aries, Aries is connected to the ram and to the mountains and things like that. So there is a specific form of Durga called as Vana Durga that they worship. I don't know whether you have come across. Vana means forest. Durga, which means there is no temples for her. She is standing with almost 20 arms that she has, 10 arms on each side. And all the weapons are there, but there is no a temple for her. She lives in the wilderness of the forest. And she's worshipped.
Oh, wow.
Okay. When Mars is in Scorpio, she is worshipped as Bhadrakali in Kerala. So there is they're the same avatar in Devi Mahatmya talks about whether it's Kali or Durga, they are same kind of energies. Now, what I observed with Mars is Mars owns a Dharma Rashi, or the first sign, Aries is Dharma, and a Moksha, which is watery sign, Scorpio, is what it rules, the Rashis. However, if you look at what is the first house, Aries is connected to the head, and your eighth house is connected to your excretory organ, where you discard things from your body. And my father is a doctor, and when we were young, if you say we have a headache or something, he would say, go to the toilet, get rid of it.
Wow, yeah.
Sometimes when you and remove the toxins from the body is when your head will feel lighter, and it's a great relief. So head and excretory organs are also connected in that way, because both are ruled by Mars. Now look at Mars's, the houses where Mars Karakatva is. Naturally, the primary Karakatva is of third, which is the younger sibling, courage and everything. But natural third house is Kama. It's a Kama house. And the other thing that it also has Karakatva is the sixth house. Sixth house is usually Saturn is the primary Karaka. The secondary Karaka of the sixth house is Mars. That's why it's connected to, as you said, third house is arms, sixth house is service. So Mars is all about service, to humanity. It's also connected to your arms, and it's also connected to your sixth house is also your lower abdomen and your gut, which means your intestine, your digestion, your that's what is another element that you brought about. Okay. So if you see third and sixth is controlling the Kama and the Artha Trikonas.
Yes.
And finally, you see the fourth and the 10th house naturally becomes its fall and its, Ucha. Ucha is the 10th house of Capricorn, earthy sign. Is born from Mother Earth, Puja. Or but he feels himself very weak when he comes into Ashlesha Nakshatra. But Ashlesha Nakshatra is still not very weak, I feel. You know why? Because the energies, if you see, of Ashlesha and Dhanishta, where it gets exalted, and it's Nicha and Ucha, if you see, those are controlled by animals, which are a lion and a cat.
Yes.
So they are cat family. And we know Rahu is also from Simhika, is a cat family. He belongs to, his mother was Simhika. So the cat family is the connection that you see there as well. So also what I was very surprised with when we were talking about Mars, and we talked about the sixth house, the natural sixth house Virgo, where sun enters, that's when we celebrate the autumnal Navaratra, which is the Sharad Navaratra. And if you look at the nakshatras which are following in Virgo, you have Uttara Falguni, which is associated with the animal, which is the cow. Then we have Hasta, which is associated with the animal, the buffalo. We talked about Mahishasura. Mahisha means human. And then it's Chitra Nakshatra, which is the tiger.
Tiger.
Which is Mahishasura. She's sitting on a tiger and she's coming, or a lion coming, and she is slaying the Mahisha. So somewhere the whole Rashi of Virgo has very strong connection with the the bull, then the buffalo, and the tiger. So
yeah,
very interesting energy find in Virgo.
Absolutely. I was always feeling, that sign of Virgo is really like, Kanya Rashi is the sign of Durga also, if you think about it, because Navaratri starts with new moon in Virgo, actually. And this is where it's like the whole 9 nights commence. And again, this polarity between Mars and Venus, I find so fascinating, because if we look at that, when we have full moon in Uttara Falguni, we have birthday of Lakshmi, that's holy. When we have new moon in Uttara Falguni, we have Navaratri, the birthday of Durga. Again, Mars and Venus being opposite to each other. It's just like, you could say the same thing, just two like sides of the same coin almost. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I see so much of astonishing things that we look at, and what you brought about, even solar plexus, which is controlled by Mars. In Sanskrit, we call the solar plexus chakra as Manipura, which means the city of
Manipura, yes.
City of gems. So maybe there is a lot of things that the yogis felt you can attain by controlling that chakra. It's like a city of gems or jewels, Manipura.
Yeah. Actually, some scriptures are saying, like, because in Manipura chakra we have 10 petals, and saying like 10 hands of goddess Durga also, of course. But it actually says that each of these petals represents 10 different pranas. And Yoga Kundalini Upanishad specifically says that because these pranas, these 10 different energies, these 10 different life forces, they're so vibrant, so light and beautiful, that's why it's called Manipura. It's the actual seat of energy within us. And even like in some martial arts that not just the ones that are, how to say, coming from Hindu tradition, but even like Kung Fu, and other martial arts, this particular part of the body is so important. Actually, this is where the center comes from, it's our center of gravity, when our energy comes from, truly.
And if because I've been into martial arts when I was growing up, I've seen that is the point.
Oh, really?
For 5 years, I was a brown belt in karate. And I know that point is the one that we attack, because if you get punched in your solar plexus, that area can also make you gasp for breath. It can really take away your prana for some time. And that's why in martial arts, they try to attack these marma points. Amongst these marma points, one of those is this point. So your punches, your chops, whatever you do, is you try to attack that. So that's why many of them work on that chakra, so that they can, even in Kung Fu, as you mentioned, the chi is channelized to different parts of the body. And that's why you can actually make those things very solid, like a rock. So those are some of the themes that you see even in martial arts. And Mars is connected to Kalari Payet, weapons, and swords, and daggers, and other forms of things that is used in martial arts. So all kinds of weapons that are used in martial arts can be connected to Mars.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's why it's so fascinating, because if we look at Durga, she's like a warrior goddess, but she has also so many weapons, that she's ready to protect us with. And also, if we look at yet another perspective from her, it's very often believed that these 10 arms that goddess Durga is having, that they also represent our 10 senses as well, and that she has under complete control and purifies us. It's like when all our senses and energies come together for a single higher purpose, this is where we can truly benefit from this energy of Mars, where we can actually direct it towards something higher.
No, I think this was a very, very fascinating lesson, and I really enjoyed it, Achalaji. And also, like we say, Durga is called by another name. She's also called as Dasha Prahara Mardini, which means Prahar means to attack. So she has Dasha means she has 10 arms and different kinds of attacks that she has. And one of the things that you also mentioned is about, the starving Mars that you said, that you mentioned, when it has association with Saturn, when Mars is with Saturn. Now that kind of, always has said to me that if you look at the cavemen who went hunting in deep inside the forest, his two main things when he comes across danger, like for example, there's a wild animal which is, come in front or come face to face. So the cavemen actually had only two impulses which was ingrained in them. One is to fight, or the other is to flight, which is run away, is Saturn. And
Yes.
Mars is the one which encourages you to stand your ground and to take that battle or a fight.
Yeah.
To be fearful or fearless. Sometimes you can be very aggressive and impulsive in making that, but I think it's a quick reaction. And what is the reaction we say, which is the quickest reaction? We say it's a knee-jerk reaction. Knee is the natural 10th house, and 10th house is Capricorn, where the Mars gets exalted. So Mars has to make a quick decision of thinking whether it has, or you have Saturnian qualities, which is about running away. So somebody told me, a teacher, depending on what actions you took in the previous life, your Mars will be placed accordingly in this life. Imagine that you didn't rise up to fight for an occasion, for your tribe, for your community, and you didn't show courage if you are in the battlefield, then more likely, your Mars would come with a lower avastha in this lifetime. A Swagrahi Mars, exalted, as you said, Ucha Mars, is an indication that you have really taken up and stood some ground in a previous life. That's why the Mars has come Ucha, or it's come as with the Ruchaka Yoga, which means you've taken certain actions. So why the planets are coming with certain decisions is because some of the actions you have taken in the previous life. Did you fight?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Because it is not showing anger, it's also showing your maturity as well, isn't it? Mars is about your maturity. Yes. It's also about, being, sometimes you say Mars is weak. The tamasic side of Mars, it'll make you aimless, lack of direction, lack of interest in doing activities. The Rajasic is, you'll make it more, aggressive, desirous, argumentative, rash, competitive. And the Sattvic side is, which is fearless, focused, strong, high vitality. So that's how I would say, how Sattvic and Rajasic and Tamasic would operate for the Mars. But it's a very great discussion that we have had. Anything else that you...
And that is... now when you mentioned fearlessness, one thing like really, came to my mind, which is so fascinating. Like when Krishna is actually, in some chapters, he's listing a list of qualities of different types of people. And then he is listing at some point like a whole list of qualities of his devotee. And he mentions actually as first quality, fearlessness. Because if you have trust in the divine, you cannot fear. Like otherwise your trust is not real, actually. And that is like really, really fascinating point, that you mentioned that, Dr. Paiji, and that's why I feel that the Saturn-Mars combination is like really, at least how I observed so far, it can give this spark and impulse to do something, but then Saturn is retrieving back. And it's like this constant, almost fight between both. We can even see how they are opposites, because even if you look at Mars and Saturn, like you said, from perspective of this fight or flight reaction. When we are in fight mode, when we want to actually face our so-called enemy or danger, interesting thing is that we will be always looking straight ahead of us because we want to face our enemy or predator, or however our brain perceives that. But when we are in fight mode, in the flight mode, we are just running away. It doesn't matter where we run away even. So we don't even look around. It's like Saturn looking down, right? Because we don't even care. We just want to run away as far away as possible. So yeah, it's truly fascinating that you mentioned that, Dr. Paiji. But I really think that the nice keyword here for the end of this session is truly developing this fearlessness, because our own life can become so much easier once we become more fearless. Because I believe that when we truly take to our hearts all the spiritual teachings that we read in the Gita, that we read in the Puranas, where Krishna constantly tells us that no weapon can cut the soul, no fire can burn it, no water can drown it. What is actually there to fear? He keeps reminding Arjuna, why are you worrying? What for? Just do your duty, fight. That's why entire Bhagavad Gita, where literally God talks to a warrior, is also, especially these first 6 chapters, is quite amazing. Also, I believe, lecture to just contemplate about in terms of uplifting our Mars and really understanding things from this more divine perspective.
And one more point, with all what you've been saying, which is very fascinating, is I've always seen the play of Mars and Saturn sometimes play together, but they are complementing sometimes their energies. Is, for example, both of them are tamas, and many people feel that tamas is not a great energy to have, right? It's a quality. You don't want to have that tamasic guna is the quality. But what people fail to realize that we all need tamas, because when we sleep, we are in tamas.
Of course.
Yes. The first part of your sleep pattern is called by the scientists as a random eye movement. That's when you are in the dream state. And when you're dreaming, what it means is that state is when your body is fighting, with the antibodies, are fighting all the intruders which are there. So it just has to have a great immunity. You need to have a fighting capacity of your body. And that is Mars.
Oh, wow.
The inner warrior, which is there, which builds the immunity, which fights all diseases and everything when you are in random eye movement. Then the next phase is called as deep sleep. What you said is Sushupta Avastha, which is deep state, which is Saturn. That is when the body repair work is happening.
Saturn and Kali, right? Because Kali also presides over deep sleep, yes.
So she is activating the body repair work, which means that's where your liver is getting rid of the toxins and, the absorption which is there in your small and the large intestine that is happening of the nutrients is happening because of the Saturn when you are in the deep sleep of the state. So we need these tamasic planets and the tamasic energy to become more
purify. Yeah.
Exactly, to purify. Yeah. So how can you say that Mars and Saturn are tamasic, so they are malefic? I would say they have their own role to play, but we are not trying to understand from our internal body mechanism. So that's why if you are doing a lot of work and you're not giving your body enough rest, you get diseases, and diseases is connected to Saturn. When you get fever, you want, what is the best medicine? They say rest, have plenty of fluids and water, and just keep yourself rested, because the body needs that rest. That's how you recover. So it's very simple. And the 6th house is a lot of seva and service. So what do you do? The opposite is your sleep, your meditation, your ashram. 12th house, Pisces. If 6th house is where you get worn out after a long day work, hard work, you get worn out. 12th house is your retreat, your relaxation. It's your sleep. It's your meditation. It is your, unconscious energies which is going to help you to recover. So if 6th house is the disease, 12th house is the medicine, is the cure. Complementing.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So anyway, I think, this is what I had. Any other points that you wanted to add before we wrap up today's discussion, Achalaji?
That's all from me, Dr. Paiji. It was really lovely, also to hear your points and to have this discussion. It's always great pleasure, for me, because whenever these points are being brought through and discussed, there is always like so much more to discover, really. It's truly amazing.
Because I think, whenever we come and become a student, we also get these things. So it is an inspiration. You come and you start teaching, I get inspired to get all of these thoughts which are coming in. So I think
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
that's why I encourage people to come and share, because the more we share, we don't get like, if it is, you say with money, right? You distribute money, give it in charity, you are depleted. But with knowledge, the more you share, the more you gain. So
Yes, absolutely.
it's something that I always believe, that it should be shared, whatever is there. And what a great platform that we have to, you're sitting in Mauritius, I'm here in Canada. But besides,
Yeah, that's amazing.
to bring
Yeah.
information out and to share that. So it's a wonderful tool. Probably we couldn't have thought about this 30, 40, 50 years ago, and I wonder how people learned from traditions going to Gurukul. But now I think the access
Yeah.
is so much available for people to learn from anywhere in the world. Sitting.
Absolutely. I remember, Dr. Paiji, that even, some 15 years ago, I was looking for astrology books, in any language, really. I needed to like take them, import them from some distant countries because they were just not easily available. And it's so fascinating that we are living in this age when things are so available to us. And I think we should never stop being grateful for that, really, because it's truly, truly fascinating. And yeah, definitely during this upcoming period of Navaratri, as just an end note, I would so recommend, to all of you to. It doesn't matter whether your Mars is strong or weak in a chart, but if you want some transformation in your life, just take Devi Mahatmya. It's really not a long, read, and just read it. Traditionally, we read like 1 to 2. There's some, let's say, procedure how many chapters we read a day. It's not so much, but when you read it, when you just then close your eyes and try to like truly visualize this story, and it's really not very difficult because the sage, who wrote it, he really gave so many details that the mind can focus on and contemplate upon, and it truly, truly, help us to transform. And of course, whoever would like, to join me also on this little journey that we are going to do throughout Navaratri, reading every day and contemplating on these chapters, doing some meditations, you're also more than welcome. So, but I definitely encourage all of you to connect with her when the Navaratri starts on 26 September, because it's the greatest time in the year, truly. This is the beautiful side of this guna of tamas. It helps us to change and transform something in our lives. So it's a pity not to take that opportunity.
And what a celebration we would have for the Navratra is because, as I mentioned to you, Navratra is usually celebrated when the sun is in the natural 6th house of Virgo. And as per tradition, many people keep fast. All these 9 days, people keep fast. So imagine the kind of purity that you develop by fasting during these 9 nights. The whole year, probably.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't fast, you have Ekadashi's fast, but people do not. But I would recommend that you keep fast for these 9 nights, Navaratra, and it's all connected to your system of healing, because 6th house, I said, is the root cause of all the diseases come from the 6th house, which is Rogasthana. So by fasting and keeping your stomach empty and thinking about Devi, and Kanya, which is Virgo, you will start manifesting things, and you will be able to overcome all your challenges of your life that you can see that must have plagued you. And the whole thing, even if you go to Kolkata, you will see it's called as Durga Puja. And during Durga, they make, huge pandals, and they make her with clay. And then what do? You immerse her after those 9 days. It's like you're taking away all the margin, the negative lower qualities, anger, frustration, impulsiveness, aggressiveness, argumentativeness, rashness, erratic behavior, frustrated. All of this are going to be absorbed by Durga because you're worshipping her, and then you're putting her in nature, and she is getting disintegrated. So it's like in 1 year, whatever is accumulated with reading the Devi Mahatmya and Durga Shaptashati part, you are actually dissolving many of your Shad Ripus. Shad Ripus, sixth. Virgo is the sixth, and Shad Ripus
Yes.
is Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Anger, grief, lust. These are your real enemies. Your enemies are not outside your body, but they are all inside you, and that is what we want to transform and cleanse. So I think this Navratra is going to, and every Navratra is going to be very, purification ceremony. And I think I would request Achala ji, if she has any link that she wants to share with me, I'll put it at the bottom of today's discussion, because when Navratra starts, you can probably join her sessions in participating any of the programs that she has during this time. But thank you very much for coming down and sharing this, nuggets of information. I'm very blessed. Thank you very much, Achala ji.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pai ji.